Hi there, fourth grade. It's Mr. Remedies back with today's mini lesson, continuing our unit on characters and characterizations and whatnot. Today, we're talking about how characters change because of what happens to them. As always, we got a couple of learning goals and success criteria. Let's see what those are for today's lesson. Today, our learning goal is that we are learning to notice characters change and infer why they do so. We have 4 success criteria today, some I can statements that'll let you know you're right on track towards our goal. They are I can define, infer, very important word for the week. I can define and use the word change correctly. I can identify events that cause changes in characters, and extra level skill, I can connect my own personal experiences to the text in order to infer reasons for change. Okay? I think if you can say those with some confidence, you're right on track to meet our goal today. Okay? As always, let's go over some quick definitions. You guys have been some rock stars with learning and using our vocabulary this week. So let's just quickly go over our 2 definitions that are important to this week's lessons. They are infer, which you guys have in your brain pieces now. It is to know without being directly told, using evidence. Okay? We've been doing that all week. You guys are right on track to keep being successful at that. Our second little vocabulary word, if you will, that we need to be using correctly today is the word change. For our lesson today, we are talking change as it means to make or become different. Okay? A huge word in today's lesson. All right, let's look at some examples in stories we've read recently about how characters change and what causes them to do so. Okay? Our first example of change is one of our 2 main characters from Rescue and Jessica. We're talking about the character of Jessica. If you guys want to jog your memory about Rescue and Jessica, back in November we read the story about Jessica, who is eventually what we call a double amputee. Her part and portions of her legs have been removed in order due to an injury to save her life. And she goes through some changes. So my question to you is, what happened to Jessica to cause some changes? If you guys out there across Copper Scope are saying she received rescue as a service dog, you're absolutely correct. This is a monumental event in the story. It is what we call the catalyst for the whole story here. Okay, and so how did this event cause Jessica to change? What ideas do you guys have out there? If you said that she became very much more independent, you are on the right track. And if you said that eventually she began to feel happy, she had a much more positive outlook on life because of Rescue and their relationship and their companionship, then you have, boom, nailed it right on the head. Right? These are more emotional changes, changes in attitude and outlook, and these are one examples of how characters can change. The list isn't very long, but as I'm sure as you guys out there know, when we can change emotionally and when we can change our outlook, those have lasting impacts. Right? Let's look at example number 2 of character change. So here we're talking about the dad from Dad, Jackie, and Me. Okay, so what happened in Dad's life? Now, I'm not talking about like his whole life, like what happened every day of his life, but in this story, what was the agent of change? What event really kind of set Dad on a path of changing? If you said he got tickets to a Brooklyn Dodgers game for him and his son, bing, 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 you are right, right there on the correct answer. Right? Now, how did he change, though? How did he change? Think back. It wasn't too long ago we were talking about Dad, Jackie, and Me. How did it change his life? Well, he starts to support someone that also endured prejudice. As we talked about in our historical fiction unit before the holiday break, Jackie Robinson was the first African American player to play in the major leagues of professional baseball. He broke what was called the color barrier and endured lots of prejudice, lots and lots and lots of racism and harsh treatment, just because he was different. So Dad starts to support someone that kind of had a similar experience. Remember, the father in the story is deaf; he cannot hear. So he became exposed to harsh treatment and prejudice in the same way that Jackie Robinson did. Uh, that's a big change. That's a big change. Some small hobby or lifestyle changes is that he became a baseball fan. The author, the narrator, his son never knew, never mentioned his dad being a baseball fan until Jackie Robinson made his major league debut. Then, and one cool change is he learned to play baseball. Him and his son out there in front of the house, out there on the sidewalk, having a little catch. And that, I'm willing to bet that became a habit for them, over the years. So these are changes in maybe lifestyle and hobbies that the dad went through. Okay. Great example of how someone can change. Although not emotionally, still pretty cool that he changes because of one singular baseball game. That's pretty sweet. Okay, let's move on to our third and final example of the day on how characters change. From this, we're going back all the way back to our glorious flight with Papa, with Mr. Louis Blériot. You know who I'm talking about. This guy, first guy to ever fly across the English Channel when airplanes weren't all over the sky. So, what event, come on, think with me now, what event happened to Papa? What happened to old Louis that caused a lot of change in his life? Boom. We're not even going to wait. I know. He sees that machine flying in the sky right towards the beginning of the story. And man, how did it make him change? Come on, I know you got it on that track. How does he change? Well, he changes quite a bit, doesn't he? He builds many flying machines until one sustains its flight. He learned to be a pilot. A pilot wasn't a skill that people were having in those days. He learned to be a pilot. And then he becomes the first person ever to successfully fly across the English Channel. Those are monumental changes. Those are huge changes in his passion, in his pursuits, his interest, his skills. Oh, those are life-changing changes. Life-changing changes. You know what I'm talking about. Okay, so I hope you can see through our three examples that characters change in a variety of ways. Some of them are emotional, like Jessica. Some of them are a little bit of lifestyle changes, the hobby changes, like the dad and Dad, Jackie, and me. And some of them are just complete overhauls of what someone might be doing and the passions that they pursue and the interest, and their life's work, as some people say. So changes can be a wide variety of things. All right. You've done a great job. Let's move on to a short little review. All right. As a review, characters should change in stories. Boys and girls, ladies and gentlemen, kids of all ages, even though I know most of you are probably 9 to 11, but you know what I mean. Characters should change in stories. If you're reading a book, if you're reading a story, if you're watching a TV show, and the character hasn't changed for the majority of the story, I don't know if that's a story I'd be interested in reading. Okay, characters should change in stories because we change, and as we discussed in our previous lesson, characters are really reflections of us. Okay, so characters should change in stories. Characters change because of what happens to them, just like in our lives when things happen to us. Our attitudes change, our outlooks change, and that's very similar to characters and stories. Characters change because of what happens to them in the stories. And authors know that, and they purposely do that. They don't randomly come up with events to happen to characters. They do it with a purpose. Okay? To cause change. Right? And as we've seen in our three examples today, character changes can be small or large. They can be on an emotional level, on a heart level, on an attitude level, or they can be in a lifestyle level, changing what we do on a day-to-day basis or the hobbies we have, or things like that. Right? And it's these little changes, boys and girls, that really make reading enjoyable. Holy smokes, this is where the rubber meets the road. Learning to identify character changes, how to infer what causes those changes is really, really something that contributes to the enjoyment of reading. Okay, these changes in our characters and story help us learn about ourselves, and that's a wonderful skill. Okay, so today, please, be on the lookout for how your characters in your stories change as you do your independent reading. Okay, as always, I've been Mr. Remedies. You've been a class act out there across Copper's Cove, and we will see you next time.